right, welcome. We are back for Credit Versio's Q&A Wednesday live for August 9th, 2023. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I really appreciate it. And we're going to have a little fun today. It's just going to be us, or maybe not. Got one of my guys popping in the door here. I guess forgot that we do Q&A Wednesday at this time every single Wednesday. So thank you so much for joining me. I can see that we got about a dozen people or so and more people jumping on. I appreciate it. Take a second, introduce yourself. If this is your first time here, let me know. And we're going to do something. Hey, listen, every time I do a live, we get really heavy into questions. I absolutely love it. I've been doing this for over 10 years now as far as a certified FICO pro and instructor, also a Vantage Score expert. And then, I get into answering questions and we never get to do the demo, and that's perfectly fine with me. So I'm happy to watch the demo or watch the live go that way today. And hopefully we get a chance to go through. I'm going to try today to give you a full walkthrough of Credit Versio. And I realize that a good chunk of the people who are on today already have a Credit Versio account. And a lot of the questions are credit report related, credit score related. And please, absolutely bring those questions to me. I'm happy to answer them. And also, too, what's a little bit different today is as you've probably noticed, is we don't have John Alzheimer. And just to quickly explain the dynamic of the Q&A lives with me and John and without John, and the difference really is when John is here, we have this understanding that we really won't go into credit repair technique, the specific things to dispute and challenge accounts on credit reports. And even though John is very much an expert in that industry, he's one of those guys that he is the most sought after expert witness in the United States. And when big creditors get sued, when the bureaus get sued, their attorneys typically go to John Alzheimer to hire him as the expert witness to explain, to create, to opine on the way things work, and sometimes to be in deposition. So he's just got to be really mindful of the stuff that he says. So, but me, I don't do that line of work, so I'm happy to answer any credit repair questions that you have. 10 years plus in this business, I like to think that I have seen it all. And a lot of stuff is incorrect. There's some stuff that is correct, and hopefully we'll get a chance to go through the Credit Versio demo today. All right, so let's see. The Marine from Texas, welcome. I don't recognize. Let me move this a little more in the center. I don't recognize that handle, so hopefully you're new. Julie King, welcome. Good to see you. Pierre, doing great. New Orleans, we were just there. What was it, June? Yeah, we had a big credit seminar in New Orleans. We were right on Bourbon Street, too. I forgot the name of the hotel. But, yeah, that was fun. It was very exciting to be in New Orleans. Great, some of the best food I've had in a long time. Yeah, it was a great time. I think there's probably maybe 400 or 500 of us that were there. So it was really cool. All right, Julie, been using Credit Versio for about 3 months. My score has gone up over 100 points. That's great news. You know, it's always great when you're using the software to challenge items on your credit report and items that don't measure up to the law. You know, if they're wrong, you know, that we call that erroneous, incomplete, outdated, or unverifiable. Those are the 4 things that we're really looking for. And most of the time, you're not going to always know if the accounts on your credit report fall into that category, because typically you have to dispute them in order to see if that's going to be a causation for these accounts to be deleted. And the one thing that, and I've had this conversation with bureau people, with CDIA people. Who's the CDIA? It's the Consumer Data Industry Association. That's the trade association for the bureaus. And you'd be surprised at how many people in the credit repair space don't know that. It would be the equivalent of an attorney saying they've never heard of the Bar Association. Well, and when I have these conversations with bureau, former bureau and bureau employees, and also people from the CDIA, it's astonishing how much information is put out there that's actually not right. The dispute process is far less complex than you think it is. It was designed to be easy. Now, the part that's a little bit of a challenge is finding things on a credit report to dispute. And that's where the Credit Versio software really comes into play. The AI has the ability to scan every line, every bit of information on our credit reports, compare it compare every account across all three bureaus, and is able to diagnose it, able to read it to see, is there something about this account that looks to be completely wrong, or is there just a minor discrepancy that might reveal through a dispute process a bigger problem that could cause a deletion or a repair. And that's a lot of times the goal when we're trying to repair our credit. The goal really is to challenge the accounts on the credit report to make sure they're legit, to make sure that they are reported accurately. I had a wonderful experience last week. My customer service guy, who's fantastic, his name is Travis. If you've ever called in, that's the guy you're going to get a hold of. He was on vacation for a week, so it was yours truly on the phone the whole time, and I absolutely loved it. I miss being on the phone talking to clients. And I had one lady ask me a question that I used to get all the time back in my previous company, where it was white glove, full service credit repair, and they would ask, why am can I dispute something that really happened? Because this stuff is legitimate. And I would tell them, well, being legitimate and being accurate are two totally different things. True, the events may have taken place. Maybe it did pay that late. Maybe this was purchased by a collection company. But is it accurate? And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about disputing accounts to see if they measure up to the law, if they are verifiable. So let's jump in, and I'll give you this quick qualifier. This is a live Q&A. Feel free to post your question. If you have any questions about the dispute process, credit scores, how the bureaus work, anything like that, that is my bread and butter and what I've been doing for over a decade now. Happy to answer the question for you. So let's move over to Credit Versio. All right, here we go. You know what? Let me get rid of my logos here. No, that's not what I meant to do. Let's get rid of the Credit Versio logo. There we go. Now we're looking at a nice, clean screen. Let me see if I can just zoom that in a little bit more. There we go. How's that look to you? Everything looking okay? Can read that all right? Okay, so what we're looking at is the home page to Credit Versio. And before we get started, before anybody gets started, especially if you're new, or even if you've gone through maybe a round or two, one of the things that you want to check for is, did you watch the tutorials and this has been my experience being on the phone. This has been Travis, who now runs customer service, his experience being on the phone, that about 90% of the questions that we get are already answered right here in the tutorial videos. They're really short too. In fact, this intro video, I think, is about a minute and 30 seconds at the most. And then about 3 minutes for number 1 and 2. I think maybe 3 and 4 or 4 minutes long, but they're really short, and they tell you how to set up your Credit Versio account, and they give you some great tips for getting the best results possible. So most people do, in fact, watch the tutorial videos, and then you want to cruise over to, well, in fact, I can do this by going to the home page, is you want to scroll down. Now, I'm on a desktop right now. I realize that over 90% of the people who are using Credit Versio are on a mobile device. Not really easy to do when I'm doing a live like this on multiple platforms at the same time. So I'm gonna demonstrate on desktop, but the mobile version looks very, very similar, except for scrolling down with your mouse. You're going to be scrolling with your thumb. So we go down to the very bottom of the account, and you'll notice that I'm missing something very critical. Now, this is a demo account, of course. This is real credit report data that's in here. We've, of course, changed the names of the companies and the account numbers to mask the data, but this is a real credit report that I'm going to be showing you here in a second that we're going to go through. One of the first things that I need to do in order to be effective is I need to add my photo ID, and I need to add my proof of address. Well, so why are we doing this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Let me just jump in here. So when I click Add It, you're going to see this screen, and I'll click Add New. I'm going to add my photo ID. So I'm going to go over to my desktop, and I've got a place where I have my demo IDs, and I'm going to drag over my driver's license. It's a mock-up driver's license, but still. And I'm going to click Save. Excellent. So now I've got a photo ID. I've got a little green check mark. The best format for this is JPEG. That's what most people have, because most people, as I said a second ago, are on a mobile device. They're taking a picture of their ID. It's a JPEG by default. or a similar format. I know Apple does things a little bit differently, but those will upload just fine. Now I want to grab the second form of ID. This is critical because a lot of people are going to ask, wait a minute, the address on my ID, on my driver's license, is not where I live anymore. That's okay. Or maybe the name changed. Maybe you got married and you took your husband's last name and it's different now. That's okay. The bureaus just want to see a photo ID. It could be a driver's license, state issued ID. It could be a passport. But they're going to get your address from a recent utility bill. So let me pop this up real quick. I'll put it over here. Here is my Nevada Energy utility bill. Now, what is the most important part when you're uploading your proof of address? And I want you to keep this in mind. The most important part is that it comes from some kind of an entity, some company that validated your ID. Meaning they probably did a credit check. So, of course, if I'm going to get a utility bill, of course, they check the credit. We all know that. If I'm going to get you can also use a bank statement. You don't need to show balances or anything, but you can use the upper portion of a bank statement. Really what the bureaus want to see is they want to see the name of the creditor, ideally their address on it. Nevada Energy is one of those things that they're just so big, just like maybe Edison, that it's fine if they don't have their address, but got my address on here, not my real address, my demo address. And this is, and it's recent. So this is from July 31st of 2023. So this is not even a month old. You really want to stick with around a document that's no older than 60 days. Maybe you can push 90, but the newer the better. This way, the bureaus are going to know that, oh, this is coming from Nevada Energy. It could also come from, maybe it's an insurance statement. Let's see, it could be water, electric, trash, gas. It could be a W-2. It could be some kind of a tax document. You don't need to show any income. You don't need to show your social, but it does need to have your full name and your address. These are all things that are acceptable because they know that all of these entities that I just named did validate your identity. They did verify that you live at this address. So the bureaus are comfortable accepting this as your form of ID. All right. So I'm going to click proof of address, add new, and I'm going to drag that document over. Also, this is a PNG. PNG is going to work just fine too. PNG, JPEG is okay. Don't do PDF. PDF can create some problems sometimes. Anytime we have anybody call in, they're having issues with their ID not being attached to their dispute letter, usually it's because it's a corrupt PDF document. Okay, let's go over here. Julie, I've sent out round 3 letters. I'm having a hard time removing hard inquiries. Oh, I'm glad you asked about hard inquiries. Also, there is a repo on my account. Yes, I owe it, but it was sold to a collection company, law firm, and showing a balance. This company is not budging. Okay, I'm glad. Julie, this is a perfect question because there's 2 things here that I want to address. And one of them I'm going to show a demo of here in a few minutes, and that's going to be inquiries. But let me address the collection company first. So there is this perpetuating myth that's out there. And this is one of the things that myself and John Alzheimer, formerly of FICO and Equifax, Steve Rieger, 27 years over at TransUnion, everybody that I've interviewed, Judah Stein, who is one of the top FCRA and FDCPA lawyers in the U.S., they all agree that, not that there's any contention around this, not that there's any question around this. The only reason why there's any doubt is because it's coming from so-called credit repair people who are spreading misinformation. A debt is an asset, Julie. What I mean by that is, just like, let me grab something, like this phone for an example. Okay, it's paid for, it's not on contract anymore. This is an iPhone 13 Max, I think. Anyway, this is my property. Okay, I own this, and I can do with it whatever I want. If I want to sell this to somebody, I can sell it. It is an asset. Okay, debts are the same thing. When you buy something, charge something, have a credit card, auto loan, anything like that, that debt is an asset. It goes on somebody's asset sheet. It can be sold. So I keep hearing this, well, don't ever call your the collection company has no right to collect from you. You better bet they do. In fact, collection companies file about 44,000 lawsuits a year, and they're not losing these lawsuits most of the time unless they've got something wrong in their data, which it doesn't happen very often. The reason why I know this, I have several friends, including a good one here in Las Vegas. That's all he does all day long. He files lawsuits on behalf of a credit company, a debt collector, excuse me, collection company that employs him. So all that to say, Julie, that you can ask, you can dispute, you can challenge. It is their obligation to respond and prove to the Bureau that everything is reporting accurately and that they do have a chain of ownership. They do own the debt, whether it's been assigned to them or they bought the debt. So you can dispute 4 or 5 times. If they're not budging, if they've done what they need to do to verify the debt, then the debt's been verified. And there it will stay until it is satisfied. Now, back to, you know what, Julie, I'm going to answer your inquiries question when I go over to the inquiries dispute side. So let's just put a comma there. Let me get over to Kiana. I hope I'm saying that right. Are there more dispute reasons as you get further into the round? Yeah, as a matter of fact, so dispute reasons, Kiana, are always based on the type of account it is and potentially what's wrong with the account. So the AI is reading the credit report. It's comparing every account across all 3 bureaus looking for discrepancies. Now, you're only going to see the most flagrant and obvious to the software anyway, errors on a credit report on round 1. Round 1 is just, we got an initial credit report. We don't have anything to compare it to. So even in the credit repair space before Credit Versio, before sophisticated software, we always had a saying, and that is that the credit repair process really starts at round 2. Well, why is that? Because now round 1, you've started a challenge. They are obligated to respond to that challenge, whether they do or not. But when they do, now you have credit report number 2. Now you've got something to compare it with. What changed? Was there something deleted, something repaired, something new added, or did something change in the way the data is being presented? That's what Credit Versio does beautifully, and it can find probably 7 or 8, because there's really only about 7 or 8 different kinds of errors to find on a first credit report, because there's not a lot there. But when you get round 2 and then 3, then 4, Credit Versio is creating a digital spreadsheet of your credit report behind the scenes, and is comparing all the data from the 4th credit report to the 3rd, to the 2nd, to the 1st. What's been changing, and is anything a discrepancy? Is anything cause for dispute? So where it might only have 6, 7 things that it can find on a round 1, it can have 20 different things by the time you're getting into round 2, 3, 4, and beyond. So yes, it gets much, much smarter as it has more data to crunch and to analyze. Okay. Stan Freeman, good to see you. Whole CV family, keep pushing for greatness. If you just joined, you took a first step towards getting your credit back on track. Credit Versio, thank you, Stan. Great words of encouragement. Julie says, thank you. You're very welcome. After so many rounds and creditors not giving up, when should you settle and handle the collection, and how should you settle? Yeah, so the great question, Stan, and I went through this personally. As a general rule, now we have wonderful metrics for deletion success rate based off of the type of account, the creditor, longevity, rounds of dispute, type of disputes used. I mean, we have tremendous amount of data. Now that we're coming up on about I think last I looked, we had 343,000 accounts in Credit Versio. Not all of them are active anymore, but we've had a ton of people go through, so we've collected that data. And we still see a good chunk of deletions coming off on round 5, but then it just dips after that. And the reason for that is pretty straightforward. Anything that can be deleted is usually, and this doesn't apply just to Credit Versio. This applies in the entire credit repair space. So you go to who was it that was just like the Marine from, no, I'm sorry, it was Pierre. Yeah, Pierre says he was from New Orleans, or is from New Orleans. When we had that big seminar, or when we had big seminars for people in this space, and there's typically hundreds and hundreds of us there, These are all things that are given. We all know this stuff, that the dispute process really begins at round 2 and usually ends around round 5. And anything that can be deleted, can be repaired, it usually takes place between round 2 and round 5. Sometimes round 1 if you get that low-hanging fruit, but usually it's 2 and 5. Now, once you get down to round 5 and you don't see Credit Versio pointing out an error, meaning the word error is not in the suggested reason. In fact, let me show you what that looks like. Hold on one second. Here we go. Okay, let me share my screen again. Can you see right here where it says duplicate credit error? The word error. I know it might be a little hard to read, especially if you're watching me on a smartphone. If you're in round 5 and you're not seeing the word error on anything, it means that there's probably nothing there, at least materially, on the credit report that Credit Versio was able to find that indicates that there's a strong dispute reason. So to answer your question, Stan, I would say once you wrap up round 5, you're probably done. And then at that point, if you want to settle debts, which I'm an advocate of doing that. I did that personally. There's a couple I let go because they were pretty big and I was just kind of burying my head in the sand at the time. But if you want to settle debt, there's a couple of positive things to keep in mind. One, and I'm going to contradict a lot of, I was on TikTok yesterday looking at some people to partner with because we have a big presence on TikTok with some of our partners. And again, I always see this information as being wrong. And that is that there's something punitive about paying off a collection. That's not true. If you pay off a collection, all the contemporary, and then I'll get to how to settle it in a second here, Stan. But if you pay off a collection, all of the contemporary scoring models completely, they will ignore that, even though it's cosmetically there. It's not factored into scoring. So Vantage Score 3.0, 4.0 does not factor paid collections. FICO 8, okay, that's the most prominent, ubiquitous scoring model right now. So if you go to an auto dealership, you get a credit card, anything like that, chances are really good it's going to use a version of FICO 8. So it might be an auto FICO 8. So if you get like a My FICO score, you get like a Experian app like I've got, it'll break down the different FICO scores for you. There's always a contemporary auto FICO. There's a contemporary credit card FICO. There's not a contemporary mortgage FICO, but that's about to change. The mortgage is always going to be the exception to the rule. But if you're going to go buy a car, get a credit card, apply for just about any kind of credit apart from a home, a paid collection is categorically ignored in the scoring algorithm. So this applies to FICO 8, FICO 9, FICO 10, FICO 10T, which 10 and 10T are not really in use at the moment, but they will be in use within about 12 to 18 months for mortgage. Okay, so keep that in mind that if you pay that off, it's not going to refresh it and renew it. Like I heard a guy yesterday say, I actually wanted to message the guy and say, listen, this is not right at all. And if anybody wants to know why, I'm more than happy to explain it to you. But but it's not. There's nothing punitive about paying off a collection. Now, the only risk in ever paying off a collection is if you don't pay it off all the way. So when you pay off a collection, settle the whole thing. Don't make a payment because you can reactivate some of these debts are time barred, meaning the time elapses for them to sue you. It's the statute of limitations. If you're outside of that and you pay them, it can reactivate the statute of limitations. But that tends to not be a problem because most of the time people don't pay collections on installments. They just settle it. I see a lot of people settling collection debt for 20 cents on the dollar, 30 cents. You might approach them with 50. They're going to tell you to go pound sand. But it just depends. You're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. You're not going to hurt a collection agent's feelings. I mean, you think about what these guys go through all day long. They're getting hung up on. They're getting cursed out. They're hearing every excuse you could possibly imagine. So if you tell them, hey, listen, this is what I got. Okay, I got this $1,000 debt with you guys. I know it's from XYZ company before. I got $500. Okay, can we settle this right now? And just do me a huge favor. Can you delete it from my credit report? Now, it turns out this isn't really necessary unless you're going to buy a home. But if you have no plans of buying a home in the near future, then you don't even have to worry about that part. Just try to get it settled and pay it off in one big installment. Okay. Mandy, Florida. I love Florida. Hello to Florida. The most beautiful women are Georgia fans. I love it. Okay, my husband. Now I have multiple accounts on our credit report with zero balance, but show some late payments. Do these usually get deleted in the first round? We use some suggested dispute reasons. It depends. There is no usually does something happen. It's really at the discretion of the creditor. If it's a zero balance, if it's an older account, if the late payments happened a while ago, you can have a pretty good chance. But one of the parts of answering these kinds of questions is, and I answer this with the utmost amount of empathy, is nobody knows. I don't know. It's not up to Credit Versio. It's not up to me. It's not up to you. It doesn't matter what the letter says as long as it's directed at what you're disputing. A suggested reason is totally fine. There's only a handful of dispute codes, just so you understand. Like, it's not like there's some reason that's a superpower and that's going to cause something to get deleted. This is explaining how the dispute process works. There's only a handful of things that can be wrong with an account. There's only a handful of things that the creditor can do. So either the account is erroneous, outdated, incomplete, or unverifiable, and that's usually the one that causes deletions and things to be repaired, is the fact that they can't verify it or won't verify it because they don't have access to the data or they just don't care. When you dispute things, a lot of times the data furnisher will just fix it. They're not going to do an investigation. They do have auto processing where they just make decisions based off of what you're asking. Again, there's only so many things that you can dispute on a credit report. There's only so many dispute reasons, and there are only so many things a creditor can do. So if it can come off, Mandy, it's going to happen between it might happen round number 1. It could be round number 2, 3, or 4. Then it's all going to come down to, does the data furnisher / creditor, do they have the information to provide to the credit bureau? Can they tell the credit bureau, yes, this is all correct and here's the documentation? Now, they don't need to send you a whole book of documentation. That's not the way the law is written. The bureau themselves will usually send you some kind of documentation, and in there it'll give an explanation of what the creditor said. So can it happen? Yes, fingers crossed. It happens a lot. The deletion rate for things like that can be high. It just depends on what it is and a few other factors. Okay. And if anybody needs any clarity on this stuff or wants me to expand on it, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer. Stan, so will collections hurt when applying for a mortgage if you haven't taken care of that collection? Yes. And matter of fact, if you have an unpaid collection, depending on the dollar amount, I know there's some exceptions for medical, but depending on the dollar amount, the underwriter, now the mortgage broker will probably tell you this, but it's not the mortgage broker who's going to enforce it. It's going to be the underwriter. And the underwriter for sure will make you pay that. I've seen that I've purchased a lot of homes in my life. I probably somewhere around, well, a lot, maybe 15 of them in the last 30 years or so, maybe 25 years. And always, not that I had collections on my credit report, but just knowing the process. And also one of the things that I do as a certified FICO pro, as an instructor that can teach FICO, is I've taught a lot of mortgage brokers how credit scoring works. Be surprised how little mortgage brokers know sometimes. And it's not a slight against mortgage brokers. That's just not necessarily their job. All that comes down to the underwriter. Okay. Let's see. You are very welcome, Mandy. Continue to ask questions. And I know, Julie, I need to get back to the inquiry. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go back to the demo I was doing. And Stan, you're going to be my question guy for the day. I love it. Okay, if an item got deleted in round 1, 2, and somehow shows back on your credit report while in round 4 or 5, is that possible? Anything's possible. That's always one of the things that can happen when you're disputing. But typically, it's not from the same collection company. The way that I see collections when they come back say you have a credit card, say it's an American Express, I'm just making something up. Say you have an American Express charge off, it gets sold to Midland Funding. You dispute it, Midland deletes it, and then 3 months later, LVNV buys that Midland debt, and then it shows up again. Okay, it's still the original creditor. It's still an American Express collection, but it's with a different company. So it's a whole new thing as far as the credit bureaus are concerned. Now, to answer your question, will Credit Versio see that? Yeah, Credit Versio loves stuff like that. It will go back, especially Stan, if you're like in round 5, let's just say, and that collection came off in round 1. Remember, I was telling you, and I think somebody asked this question a second ago. I forgot who it was. Oh, it was Kiana, about the dispute reasons. Are there more of them as you go into the dispute process? Well, yes, because there's more data for Credit Versio to chew on now. So Credit Versio will see that. So if you've got a new collection, because all the original data is going to be the same from American Express, the open date, the account number could change, but there's enough, the algorithm is smart enough to understand that that's the same collection that you disputed way back in round 1 with Midland, and it will write the dispute like that. And it'll put the dates in. It'll say something to the effect, hey, I disputed this American Express collection with Midland Funding at such and such date. It was deleted because it did not comply with the law. And now you're adding it back onto my credit report through LVNV Collection Company without having verified the debt. That's how intricate that dispute reason gets. And that stuff works beautifully. Okay. Let's see. Stan, I got a couple more comments, questions that came in. David Fenton, I see judgments are no longer on credit reports, but they are on public records now. Yeah, David, that changed in 2018. That was the phase 2 of NCAP. That was the National Consumer Assistance Program, where public records, apart from bankruptcy, were, among other things, that's when Metro 2 became the standard, and also judgments and tax liens were no longer in the public records section. So guess who blew up? SageStream and LexisNexis and a handful of others, because that's where that data is housed now. However, Chapter 7, Chapter 13, Chapter 11 bankruptcy is still going to be on a credit report. Okay. But it's the same company. It's just confusing on how it was deleted and then all of a sudden shows back up. Yeah. So just to reiterate, Stan, it's because it's even though the original debt, using the example that I use, is American Express, it's now owned by a different collection company. So the first one, remember, was Midland, and then now it's owned by LVNV. So yeah, same original creditor, now 2 owners. Each of those owners can report information, not at the same time. That won't happen, and if it does, Credit Versio catches that very, very easily. But it's very, very rare that we see that. But that's how you end up with something coming back. It gets purchased. Now, I wouldn't fret about that too much, and here's why. I know a little bit about, or a reasonable amount about how the collection industry works. Typically, debts are hot within when they go into default. That's when they get charged off, usually within the first 6 to 12 months. And then after that, they pretty much die. Or I should say they drop off and they get sold off to B-class paper, D-class paper. What I mean by that is if I'm a debt collector, if I'm Midland Funding, let's use them as an example, because let's stick with what we're using. And I want to collect a debt. And I've been calling you, Stan, and I've been blowing you up as much as I can. That's legal. Following the FDCPA, that's the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And there's a lot of criteria in there that I got to know as a debt collector that I got to follow. And if I've been trying to get you to pay for 6 months and it's like, man, cannot find this guy, not having any success, we're going to sunset this account right here along with maybe 10,000 others that we've been working on in our call centers. And I'm going to sell that off to a creditor. So now I'm going to sell that debt. And somebody else is going to come buy it at a discounted amount. And they're going to give it a shot. But after it changes hands 2 times like that, pretty much nobody wants it. They'll buy it for pennies on the dollar and you'll just get mail. But usually nobody's going to call you again because that's pretty expensive. But usually if anything gets owned twice at all, ever, that's the extent of it typically. You don't see this being bought and sold, exchanged, and bouncing around 3 different collection companies. I mean, I haven't seen it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I've never seen it in 10 years. Okay. Very good. Glad that you got it. Kiana, can you explain date last active and when it may change on the credit report? Date last, last activity date. I'm glad you asked. It's a great question because sometimes people mistake that as the date when from there you count 7 years until it falls off. So date of last activity doesn't really mean anything except for when the data furnisher did what's called updating the tape. So usually every 30 days or so, um, the data furnisher slash creditors will provide information to the credit bureaus. Now, let's say you have a charge off and you're disputing the charge off, and the date of last activity is, just keeps updating month after month after month to last month or this month. It doesn't mean the debt's being refreshed. That's one of the reasons why I get that question a lot, Kiana. Maybe that's the what's behind you asking me. That doesn't mean the debt's getting refreshed or it's continuing to drop your score or it's going to stay on longer. All that means is that's the last time the data furnisher updated the bureau on that particular account. So if you have a consumer credit report like a Smart Credit or Identity IQ or I got my Experian app. If you look at the payment history and you see like CO, that's collection charge off, and you see it month after month after month. Some people go, oh my gosh, they're marking me having a charge off every month. No, they're not marking you as a brand new charge off every month. All they're saying is that the status of this account is the same this month as it was last month. And the next month, it'll say the same thing. It means it's just the same. Doesn't mean doesn't like refresh or update anything to do more damage. It's just telling you that the activity is what it is right now. So the way things fall off, Kiana, is, and forgive me if I'm not saying that right, is hard coded into your credit report. Now, you and I don't see this. What you and I see is what's called a consumer credit disclosure. Okay, a credit report, which we call it credit report, but that's not really what we see. A credit report is a massive, massive document. The thing that you and I call a credit report might be 20 pages long, 15 pages long. That's a disclosure. A real credit report is probably hundreds and hundreds of pages long. It's everything we've ever done is on that report. But you and I see an abbreviated version of that. It's a consumer-friendly version, so you and I can look at it and go, okay, what is this telling me? But there's a lot of data on there that's omitted. And one of the things that you will almost never see is what's called a DOFD. It's the date of first delinquency. That's the first 30-day late that led to the ultimate default of the account. So let's just say, keep going back to American Express. Let's say I had a 30-day late that went to a 60, then a 90, then a 120, and somewhere about there it's going to charge off. So when does that fall off? 7 years from that first 30-day late. Now, what happens if I'm 30-day late and then 30-day late, and then I got a 60, but then I catch up? Now I start paying on time again. I pay on time for another 6 months or a year. And then I got troubles again. Then it's 30, 60, and 90. And then it goes into a charge-off state, 120 charge-off state. So when does the DUFD start? Not on the 30-day where I got caught up. It's the 30-day that ultimately went into full default. Okay, so that's when that 7-year mark. Don't need to pay attention to the data last activity. It's really meaningless. Okay. Stan, I meant to say that it's the same collection company, and as this collection is running out on time barred, i.e. statute of limitations. Okay, so you'd get the same dispute reason from Credit Versio if it happened to pop up from the same debt collector. Now, the time barred date, this is something you have to look up per your state. Where was the debt originated? What state? It's really easy to find out. Just go statute of limitations or time barred debt, stand wherever state you're in. If you're in California, I think it's 4 years. If you're in Texas, it might be 6. But most states go between 4 and 7 years. There's a couple of states that it never ends. Like they can sue you at any time. So just you want to look that up. And again, you don't reset the time bar date unless you make a payment, a partial payment. If you pay it off in full, you don't have to worry about that. Okay. Let's see exactly. Thanks for clarifying. Well, I can say since I joined back in February, Credit Versio has truly changed my credit in my life. Love to hear it, Stan. That's awesome. Keanu with a question. So, how do you verify the DOFD with a debt buyer if no payment history? Yeah, here really the only way that you can do it, Keanu, is you got to get a pay. The only time you can see it won't tell you what the DOFD is, but by default you can factor it by getting a credit report from a bureau, a real paper credit report. And then when you get it, and usually you can get those when you dispute things, or you can just request it. And if you look at a credit report, on the far right-hand side, excuse me, it'll say this account is due to report until, and it'll tell you the date that it's going to drop off. So this account is due to report until August such and such of 2023. So now you can just backdate that 7 years, and you can tell when that DOFD was. You can also look sometimes, now don't put a lot of stock in it, but sometimes you can look at the area that says last payment date. That, a lot of times that can be accurate, but not always. Okay. You missed my, oh, sorry. Did I miss your question, Marine from Texas? Hold on, I'm scrolling up. Got a lot of questions here. Oh, my apologies. I don't see it. I see a hello. I see you said the first time. I don't see it here. My mistake. Post it one more time, and let's see if it comes over. I'm not sure. Maybe there's a problem with. What are you on? You're on YouTube. Yeah, I don't see it. Post it one more time, okay? Let's see, Jeremy. How hard to get a Chapter 7 bankruptcy off your credit report using the service? It's okay. So it's a great question. There is no answer to it. And the reason why there's no answer, I'm not trying to be cheeky or slick or anything, but the only time anything ever comes off a credit report, and you'll hear me say this, I'll sound like a broken record, is if it falls under one of four categories. This is right from the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Is the account erroneous? Meaning, is there just a egregious error on it? It's totally wrong or partially wrong, and the data furnisher cannot fix it. Erroneous. Outdated, meaning is it there longer than the 7 years or 10 years it's supposed to be there? Chapter 13, 7 years from filing date. Yeah, that's Chapter 13. Chapter 7 is 10 years from the filing date. So erroneous, outdated, incomplete, unverifiable. Those are the four reasons. Now, if you dispute something on a bankruptcy, what you're really relying on is there something inaccurate about that file? Are they unable to verify it? And I'll save you the suspense, Jeremy. Freezing your LexisNexis and freezing your SageStream does not prevent the bureaus from verifying the information. That's a myth that for whatever reason continues to be perpetuated. The bureaus and secondary reporting agencies for public records have a direct digital connect. There's nothing you can do to prevent that. A freeze is just going to prevent creditors from coming in and looking in to your secondary bureaus like SageStream and LexisNexis, which are actually the same company now. They merged together, I think about 12 months ago, but I'm not quite sure. So Jeremy, all you can do is dispute it. So I'm going to give you a couple of suggestions here. One, you can dispute it. Chances are pretty good you'll get it deleted from one, maybe two. Very, very rare I see a bankruptcy coming off of all three of them unless there's something wrong with it. But having said that, one of the things I will tell you, having seen 20, 25,000 credit reports over the last 10 years and doing one-on-one consultations with people, is that bankruptcy is not the nail in the coffin that people think it is. For the same reason, or in the same vein that inquiries are not the nail in the coffin that people think they are. And I can't tell you how many credit reports I've seen over the last 10 plus years where people had high 700 credit scores with a bankruptcy because you've eliminated your debt. So that's a hard reset button. So all the even though the debt still exists, they can't collect it from you, and it's wiped out from your credit report. And because you do that, creditors are lining up to give you credit cards and give you loans again because you can't file bankruptcy again for another 10 years. I think that it's at least 7. It might be 10. So they know that you have no debt anymore. Now you have the ability to pay, potentially better than you did before. So it's a great way to rebuild. You can recover almost fully from a bankruptcy within about 24 months, provided you're doing everything right. Don't max out credit cards. Obviously, don't overextend yourself. Don't start paying things late. I mean, you got to abide by that stuff, of course. But that's just common sense stuff. But you can recover from a bankruptcy a lot faster than somebody who's just got a bunch of collections on their credit report and they're trying to rebuild. That's the tough part, because that stuff hurts for years, and then it's hard to rebuild with that stuff because nobody wants to trust you. But when there's a bankruptcy there, it is like hitting the reset button. So dispute the best you can. Follow the suggested reasons. If there's something about the account that you notice that's not right, use that as one of the dispute reasons. But I wouldn't obsess over it. Bankruptcy is there. It's a reality. Anybody can find it. It's called a public reason for a reason, because it's in the public record. And you can't, even if you were successful at deleting it from the credit report, you cannot delete it from the public record. It will be there, and there's nothing you can do about that. Not to discourage you, I'm just letting you know. I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people over the years who filed bankruptcy, and you'd be shocked at how fast people can recover from it. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's see. What should I do if the Bureau answers that they need proof that I made and sent the letter by myself and not, So this is a thing that will always happen when you're sending out dispute letters. So it has nothing to do with the letter you sent or Credit Versio. People send in templates that come from the FTC and the CFPB, and they'll get that same response. So, when you go in to create your next round, let's say lately it's been a TransUnion thing doing that. So when you go into your next round of TransUnion disputes, there's, how you pick the accounts that you want to dispute. In fact, why don't I just show you? I got it queued up here. Let's go into create a dispute letter. And real quickly, I'm going to click this just so we can get into right here, you see where it says add dispute reason? Click that. Here's the suggested, but if I do a drop down, use this, frivolous dispute response. I previously disputed this account and don't agree with your claim that it's frivolous. I personally created it and mailed this letter, and I provided the reason for my dispute in simple language. You had 30 days to investigate my dispute, and it wasn't done. Please delete any negative information in this account immediately. Okay, that's how you respond. We have that built into Credit Versio, because it doesn't matter if it's Credit Versio or if you hire a professional or if you send out your own dispute letters that you did yourself. You're going to get that dispute from time to time. This is the way that bureaus mitigate a lot of the fact that they're overextended, and sometimes they're just I don't know what the formula is. I've had several conversations with people who are in dispute resolution from the bureaus, and I've never gotten a great answer. But sometimes they'll just ignore the dispute or say, hey, listen, this wasn't you. Okay, just follow up with that. Jeremy, been 8 years on your... Oh, yeah, Jeremy, that's an old bankruptcy, my friend. I wouldn't even worry about it. I mean, listen, 24 to 36 months, you can fully recover from a bankruptcy. I'll just qualify that a little more. What I mean by that is there's two things. When I say fully recover, I mean score-wise. You can get into the high sevens. You're not going to get 850. You're probably not going to get 820, but you don't need to. You get all the best interest rates, all the goodies, everything that you and I want, all that's available at 740 and above. 740 is like the elite level. I think there's a little bit better of an interest rate for mortgages if you get 760, but I mean that depends on what's going on with the lending industry at the time. Now, so as far as score goes, you're not going to see this massive jump if the bankruptcy came off. I actually believe that too. Years ago, when I went through this whole process, and this is always full disclosure, I got into the credit repair space because I was a credit repair client like 11, 12 years ago. And I didn't have a bankruptcy, I did have tax liens, because this is back when tax liens used to be on credit reports. And I was, I think, about 740, 750 at the time. This was way at the end of my repair, where I got about 50, 60% of the stuff deleted. I settled on some of it. And the rest was already getting to be so old, it was close to aging off, because I buried my head in the sand for years. I just ignored credit for the longest period of time. And when I got those liens off, I want to say I had three. Might have been two, but it could have been three. When I got those deleted, I'm like, man, it's going to be 800 city for me now once I get these deleted. And my score didn't really move at all because it wasn't really significant at that point because those tax liens were so old. They were probably 4 or 5 years old at the least. So I wouldn't stress about it too much, Jeremy. To be honest with you, the only thing where it might still hurt you is you have score and then you have lender's criteria. And like I'll give you a great example, like premium cards. I keep picking on American Express, but they've been relevant so far in this conversation. And yeah, Julie, I will get to your inquiry here in just a second. Um, but you might have lending guidelines or lending criteria where it doesn't matter how good your score is. They're not going to give you a premium American Express card because of the bankruptcy. Okay, I'm in that boat. I had a charge off on my American Express. Probably why I'm picking on American Express. Not in a bad way. I'm just using them as an example because that was one of the things on my credit report, and that was one of the things I didn't settle because it was if you were here in the beginning of the lie, that was a big debt that I had. So and they're not going to give me a premium credit card again, even though it's been off my credit report for years. They remember me. They're like, oh, you're the guy that didn't pay us. So you might be in that area. Okay. Julie had a Chapter 7, didn't even dispute it because it's accurate and it falls off in 10 months. Yeah, don't waste your time, Julie. You're good. You're good. Jeremy, you're very welcome. I'm a witness with Credit Versio, being the low 400s now in the mid 730s. Man, that's great. That's a phenomenal story. Okay, Rob, you are very welcome. Hello, Muriel. Good to see you. Julie says same. Stan started low 500s, now almost 700. That's great. And a big chunk of it is too. It's also learning about how credit works. Going into the tutorial section. I hope everybody has seen this part. Let me share my screen again. But right here in tutorials, okay, this is the coaching section right here. It's 10 videos. That's it. 3, 6, 9, 10, 11. Sorry, 11 videos. It's going to explain how things work. It's Credit 101. It's the stuff that we all should have learned. I wish I would have learned this stuff when I was in high school. I would. There's a lot of mistakes that I wouldn't have made. Okay. Marine from Texas. I resent the question. Man, Marine, I don't know what is going on. Let me see if I can find this. I resent the question. I see you posting that. I just don't see the question. And I don't know what's going on. Let me see if I can see it on YouTube. And I apologize. I don't know why I'm not seeing it. I know this is a little bit of work for you, Marine, but there's two things you can do. I'm not having a problem seeing YouTube questions, but maybe switch over to Facebook. Facebook stuff is coming in easy. I don't know. It's the weirdest thing. I've never seen this before. Okay, Rod, another question. Is it necessary to send a Social Security or copy with the letters and enough with the driver's license? So no, you don't need your social. You can write it in on the letter if you want to, but it's not really all that necessary. There's two things you need. You need proof of address. Yeah, I see, Maureen. I see you. I see that you type in switching over now, but I'm not sure why I can't see that question. I promise I'm not trying to avoid you. Rod, the proof of address is an essential component, especially if your address doesn't match your driver's license. Even if it does, the Bureau still want those two forms of ID. So going back into, in fact, we'll just do a little refresher since we're all here. Let me go into, right up here into my account. You go to my docs. Should call it my IDs, but we call it my docs. So right here, proof of address. So here's mine. I got a little energy bill. Okay, Nevada Energy. And then a photo ID, hit view. Okay, there we go. PNG, JPEG is the best form. Okay, Julie, I promised I would get to your inquiries question. So let me show you this real quick. Let's just start off with Equifax. I always start with TransUnion. I'm going to change it up today. Okay, now I'm going to create some disputes. But or now I can create some disputes. So I want you to observe something real quick here. So right here, we break this up into three sections. Accounts, so these are all of your accounts, trade lines and collections. Public records, that's going to be the only public record that's left, which is bankruptcy, Chapter 7, Chapter 13, occasional Chapter 11. And then below here, inquiries. Julie, this is where the answer to your question comes in. Okay. Now, inquiries. Let's have a real quick heart-to-heart on inquiries. And I love that we have these inquiries because they have some very important key dates. Now, I'm going to start out by saying this. There is no model of FICO, no model of Vantage Score that cares about your inquiries once they reach 12 months old. Now, even though you can see them cosmetically on a credit report for 24 months, they play no role in your score after 12. That's if they played a role at all. Now, I'll quote John Alzheimer here. He says, while it's true that inquiries can affect your credit score, it is not true that they always do. That's my way of saying don't stress over inquiries. So let me show you these inquiries real quick. All right, so let's say I want to dispute some inquiries. Rule number one, don't dispute inquiries on accounts where they gave you credit, especially a credit card, because they might close your account. They're going to wonder, well, shoot, Julie, why are you disputing an inquiry on this Barclays credit card that we gave you? Maybe was that fraud? And they might close it. So never dispute accounts that have given you the credit. All right. So here we go. So what is it right now? We're in August of 2023. So anything that is older than 12 months plays no role in the score. Well, this is older than 12 months. This is 6/28/2022. No point in disputing that. This is coming up on not being relevant in a couple of months. This is what is this? About 9 months old, roughly. Okay, 2 of 22. So that's February. That's it was a year old, so that's not relevant. This is about ready to fall off. So this is 2021. So 24 months this falls off. That's going to fall off on the 4th of September. So that's just a month away, a little less than a month away. Okay, this is not really all that relevant. This is going to fall off in December. This is going to fall off in a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. And this is already not relevant because it's older than a year. So really all we have to contend with is this one in December and this one in December, and that's it. So I want you to take a second and first of all, don't obsess over inquiries because largely they're not particularly relevant. And then don't worry about inquiries that are over a year old. Okay, nobody can see them. You can see them on your credit report. We can see them on this credit report. If this was my credit report, I could see it cosmetically there, but they play no role in the score. Okay, Stephen, there you are. Okay, got it. Thank you. Here we go. Get into it here. 2 questions. On CV, can you use the credit report obtained from annualcreditreport.com? No, can't. We need a very complex partnership to export a very detailed mapped JSON code. So the reason why we're only compatible with Smart Credit and pretty much all of their products, they've got dozens of them, Identity IQ and Array and several of theirs, is because our development team spent months with their development team, because it's not just bringing in a report. First of all, you have to have a digital export, which Annual Credit Report doesn't have. Consumer grade monitoring services usually don't. Like Experian.com, MyFICO, the bureaus don't have digital exports because that's not what they're in the business to do. They're in the business of delivering you a PDF pretty much. So that's why we go to these big companies that have digital export capabilities, dev teams that can work with our dev team, and we have to map all that stuff. So it's really, really complex to get that credit report over into our AI. If all collections are paid or removed, are you still really considered as non-credit worthy? How can you improve credit worthiness if I have changed my consumer behavior in paid collections? So, Stephen, maybe you might have missed the first part of the live, and then we're getting ready to, we're actually over an hour. So, Stephen, maybe I'll finish up with your questions. Great questions. Let me just put it up again. If they're all paid or removed, so they don't have to be removed, Stephen, just so you know. This is relatively new, couple years old. All contemporary models of FICO, so that's FICO 8, that's the most used credit score right now. In all versions of FICO Model 8, so you've got Auto FICO, Credit Card FICO. If you go to your Experian app or anywhere you get My FICO, anywhere you get a FICO score, that's the predominant score right now, apart from real estate. That does not consider collections that are paid. They can be there cosmetically. You can have paid collections, $0 owed, and those are not seen. Okay, those are seen. You and I can see that, but the algorithms that FICO and VantageScore use completely bypass paid collections, like they're not even there. So don't worry about that. Let's see. Are you still really considered as non-creditworthy? No, not if. We live in a time where everything is done with what's called desktop underwriting. Desktop underwriting is a broad term that really explains how machines, how technology, how software is making approval decisions for us. Okay, imagine how many credit card applications come into Chase on a daily basis or Amex on a daily basis. Probably thousands. Who knows? Maybe 10,000 maybe during the holidays. Nobody's looking at these. It's all done by algorithms. It's all predicated on really a couple of things. It's going to be score algorithm by FICO most of the time, and Vantage Score as far as credit cards are concerned. Usually they'll look at a Vantage Score and a FICO. And then how does that stack up against their lending criteria? Do you have a bankruptcy? They might not want to see that. Some lenders have different appetites for risk. But if you have paid collections and nobody's looking at the credit report because nobody needs to, and FICO and VantageScore are both ignoring paid collections, it doesn't affect your credit worthiness. It just means that it's going to score whatever else is there, not your collections. Let me see if you had another part to that. How can you have changed my consumer? Yeah, all you have to do is really, Stephen, derogatory credit, as long as you're doing everything else right, paying bills on time, you're not maxing out credit cards, you're not carrying heavy balances, largely the way FICO and VantageScore work, they have this mentality of, what have you done for me lately? Okay, what are you doing right now at this moment in time? And in particular, what have you been doing over the last 2 years? So just so you know, FICO scores that 300 to 850 score. It's largely what they are. There's some exceptions to that, but the bulk of the scores that you and I are going to see are going to fall between 300 and 850. That number, whatever it is a risk indicator for one thing, and that is how likely are you to go into what's called major derogatory in the next 24 months. So that's all that score is doing. That's all creditors want to know is, what are you going to do in the next 24 months based on what you've done, particularly in the last 24 months? Now, granted, derogatory credit can stay on there for 7 years. Bankruptcy Chapter 7 can stay on for 10. But the algorithms that create that score to determine your risk are largely based off of what happened in the last 24 months. It's a 24-month swing. What are you going to do 24 months in the future? Largely based off of what have you done in the last 24 months, including right now in this moment of time. So that's why obsessing over late payments that are 3 or 4 years old is not really a thing. As long as you're not carrying heavy credit card debt, you're paying everything on time, that's a good credit risk. Okay, that's a person that a lender can get behind. So what's a major derogatory? A major derogatory is defined as a 90-day late or worse. Okay, minor derog, 30-day, 60-day. Creditors actually don't mind that stuff. They don't mind that stuff because they get to charge you extra money if you're 30 days late or you're 60 days late. In fact, one of the best quotes was a credit card company says that our favorite customers are the ones who pay us on time most of the time. Now, they don't want people going into default, but it's perfectly okay if, you know what happens when we pay stuff late. I mean, I've done it in years, and hopefully you're not doing it at all, but what happens when we pay something late? Oh, there's a fee for that. It's just, it's a money-making racket. But, so they're okay with 30-day, maybe 60 days, as long as it's not happening at this very moment in time, because that could be an indicator that maybe there's bigger trouble on the horizon. Maybe you might go into full default. But if it was 2 years ago, they don't really care so much about that. Okay, they care about 90-day, 120. That's where problems really start to happen. Okay. I think we're about ready to wrap up. This is the longest I've gone in a while, about an hour and 5 minutes. Stan, Stephen, you are very welcome. Julie, you are very welcome. I'm glad I'm really surprised and glad I didn't forget to get around to your inquiry question, Julie, if you're still here. Okay, any last questions? I see we got a couple dozen people still on. So some of you have been very quiet. Stephen, you've been awesome. Julie, Stan, I mean, all of you. Raw, you guys have been great. Kiana especially, new voice tonight. I appreciate the great questions. So I'm going to jump off here unless somebody throws something at me in the next 20 seconds or so. And then once again, we got so many great questions. I really didn't get a chance to do the full demo of Credit Versio, but I did get to show you the important stuff that I really wanted to demonstrate for you today. All right. We will be back next Wednesday, same time. Only I will have John Olsheimer with me. And for those who have not seen John Olsheimer, 30 years in the credit space, not credit repair, and 30 years, much of that with FICO and Equifax, and he is considered to be the #1 authority on credit in the United States. And love having him on. He's a good friend, and he answers questions in a depth that I always learn something. Susan coming in at the last minute. All right. Does the CRA need to be? Does the CRA need to put a dispute remark on the first 30 days after dispute sent? Yeah, there's a status in there called in dispute. And I'm not sure if it's a thing anymore, Susan, but attorneys used to sue on that. Like that was a big thing for a while there. Like attorneys, like a customer would file a dispute, a client would file a dispute, and by law they have to write in there, they have to give an indication that the account is in dispute. And the reason why they have to do that is, I'll give you an example. Mortgage brokers and underwriters never want you to do credit repair during the underwriting process or when you're about to go into qualification. The reason is, a lot of people don't know this. This is kind of interesting. When something is in dispute, and it needs to say that in the dispute status, there's a little section called dispute status. If it's in dispute, that item is automatically removed from the scoring algorithm. So if you dispute, like this was a thing years ago, where people give you advice like, hey, before you apply for anything, dispute all your negative credit so it's removed from the scoring algorithm. Well, mortgage broker is not going to let you do that because it gives a false projection of or representation rather of what your score is. So that's why that dispute area in there, Susan. That's why your mortgage broker and your underwriter is always going to look to see if anything's in dispute. If there is, you're out. They'll tell you. Go call them. Call the bureau up and tell them that you're no longer disputing that account, and we can proceed once that's been taken out of dispute status. But yes, Susan, they do have to put it in there, and it does or should automatically reset and resolve after the 30 days. Most of the time it does. Sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't really harm anything if it doesn't. Usually it might go a little bit longer than 30 days, but normally it resolves itself. Okay, great question. Thank you so much for being here today. Looking forward to seeing you next Wednesday. And if you're watching this on a replay, feel free to drop your question in Facebook or YouTube. I'll swing back around and answer it. And until next time, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.